going to run you through the 5 key elements of your brand. This includes naming your company, your visual identity, your brand voice, your culture, and your customer experience. All these things work together to pull customers and talented employees in your direction. At the very start, your first big brand decision would be your company's name. The 2 most important things to consider when picking a name are what it sounds like, what it echoes and reflects when you say it or hear it, and then how easy is it to remember. Let me show you a simple example. Let's say you decided you wanted to create a home painting company. It's a good example because it's a business with high demand and low startup costs, and typically has only a few competitors that take their branding very seriously. If you were thinking of it as a small family business, you might choose to name your company using your last name followed by the work you do, like Johnson Painting. It sounds decent, seems to reflect a true personal commitment, and while not super impactful, it won't be hard to remember. But for this example, I want to encourage you to think a little bit bigger. Let's say your goal is to reach a point that you'll never have to pick up a paintbrush again, and your vision is to grow steadily and eventually have teams painting all over New England, and you hope to sell it someday. For this brand, you might choose a more professional sounding name like Cut Above Painting or Even Flow Painters. First, these names go a step further in reflecting a certain character. For any size painting company, really, you can almost see a committed crew member making a perfect brushstroke. You'll see in a minute how starting out with a name like one of these also gives you a great head start in developing the brand identity you're after. Now we're going to talk about your brand's visual identity. Let's start with your logo. A common misconception is that a company's logo is its brand. But while your logo will be very much a part of your brand's identity, by itself, it's not all there is to your company's brand. It is, however, extremely important to get your logo right because it will be the most iconic visual representation of your brand. So the value of a professionally designed logo that reflects your desired brand position is very, very high. Here, let me illustrate this for you. Let's say you've decided the name Even Flow Painters is the name for you. You hire someone to design a logo, you go through a few iterations, and just like that, the Even Flow brand is off to a great start with a really great name and an impressive logo. And you've successfully made 2 big brand decisions that will impact your business success forever. Company name and logo in hand, you're now ready to build out the next elements of your complete visual identity suite. Sometimes we refer to this collection as a company's brand guideline, and they can get pretty detailed sometimes. But for now, let's stick with the basics for Even Flow. This would include the typefaces or fonts you'll use, your color palette, and the design style of things like your business card, documents, brochures, vehicle signage, maybe even a company uniform, and of course, your website. This is how we might pull together the visual identity for Even Flow. Pretty tight, right? Can you feel this brand coming together visually? Now, I purposely left out any headlines or copy. I'll show you how that comes together as we're honing the company's brand voice next. Okay, we've got Even Flow's visual identity looking great. And we have some basic design guidelines to keep everyone on track as we roll out the marketing campaign. But what about the words, right? I mean, despite paying attention to some really important brand details so far, this brand doesn't quite speak to you. This is where copywriting comes into play to help you create your brand voice. Let me show you how Even Flow might explore different approaches to their brand voice and the headline right at the top of their homepage. Something a little more buttoned up like dependable service, impeccable results. Or something a bit tongue-in-cheek like you'll be glad to see us leave. But because your customer base is so varied, you decide to strike the middle with, it takes pride. Check. Now Even Flow's brand voice is helping you literally speak to your customers and puts the finishing touch on the personality you're after for the brand. Culture, culture, culture. I mentioned company culture earlier when I was talking about internal branding and its impact on employees. But here I want to deepen that discussion a bit, because on its own, a company's culture is a central element to a company's brand, both internally and externally. When I say culture, you might think of a unique language, traditions and values, and common behaviors within a community that binds its people together. Well, a company's culture is similar. When you're getting a company going, however, it doesn't have an existing culture, now does it? So as the owner, it's important to make a conscious effort to develop your company's culture and lead the creation of it. Because if you don't, it will most surely manifest on its own. At the start of the business, you'll want to define a set of values, expectations, and principles that will guide your team each day. This will influence how employees interact internally with each other and with customers, which in turn affects the external customer experience and, again, your bottom line. Ultimately, your goal in building a strong company culture is to build trust, credibility, and a positive reputation in the eyes of both your employees and your customers. The next and final key element of your brand is the experience you'll create when interacting with customers. This is aptly named the customer experience, or CX. This is part of the branding discussion because a complete customer experience considers every touch point from initial customer engagement to the delivery of your product or service and the follow-up after the sale or project completion. Each of these moments is a golden opportunity to build brand affinity. Let's imagine a potential customer has landed on the Evenflow site. They like what they see and they decide to request a quote. They fill out and submit the online form, and to make a first great impression, you and your web team decide to pop up a thank you page. That includes a calendar to pick a day and time for one of your estimators to stop by. They do that, and they leave the website. Next, you decide to have a live person call the prospective customer to confirm the appointment time. Now imagine you win the job, and the crew pulls up to the job site in clean, well-maintained vehicles, and they jump right in and start carefully covering the bushes with tarps. When the job's done, the job site is left spotless, and a few days after, a handwritten note arrives in the customer's mailbox. Take a minute and imagine all the ways you might make the total customer experience in your business the way Evenflow has. Thinking about a retail store? How can you make returns easier? Yoga studio? How about free daycare and advice on how to eat healthy as a busy family? My point is, you want to go the extra mile at every touch point. Your brand reputation will skyrocket, and so will sales. There you have it. That's the 5 key elements to a small business's brand. Next up, I'll show you how to pull them all together into an effective and efficient brand building campaign.